He is a student of American history out of the University of Kentucky. His public service to Bush Sr., his many public services to Bush Jr., into a legitimate lobbying effort in Washington. And he is the banker's lobbyist in Washington. He's a president, the chief executive officer of what is called the IIF. And the other day, he had a modest conversation with the Secretary of Treasury. Tim, just as a general, I'm thrilled you're with us today from the meetings in Washington. As a general statement, how scared is global Wall Street? How scared is Manhattan Wall Street of this moment in banking?
Sure, Tom. Thank you for that intro. It's the best intro I've had in a long time. It's such an honor to be back on your show. I listen to you every day. Look, people are worried because of just the enormous uncertainty and the daily changes that are coming out of Washington. Although I will say this week was a breakout week for Secretary Bessent. I think he really established himself as the anchor voice in this administration, a sober voice of reason. And I think the time that the industry spent with him this week was a calming experience. And I think if the administration and the White House will let Secretary Bessent get out on the front more often, I think that would help our industry, and I think it would help markets.
Okay, I'll go with you there, but basically what they did, they put a cork in the mouth of selected other Trumpites. Let's say we continue with the cork in the mouth. That's great. Bessent has to talk to Trump about what this nation needs. First thing Paul Sweeney said this morning, Mr. Adams, is shipping in Los Angeles is off a cliff. How far off a cliff do your bankers see the American economy?
Yeah, they're very worried. Obviously, the soft indicators of what we've seen initially, I think about Q3, Q4, you're going to see real indicators show that the real economy is beginning to slow. The workers that this administration say they want to help, real manufacturing factory workers, are going to get hurt. It doesn't need to happen. And I think Secretary Bessent's, again, sober voice of reason. I think if the president would listen more to Scott and let him lead on these discussions and really put in place a thoughtful policy, I think we can avoid the worst. But right now it hangs in the balance.
Tim, you're down in our Washington, D.C. bureau as we speak. You've been in meeting with some of the folks from the IMF, which has been in Washington this week. What are our global trading partners, what are they telling you these days?
Well, first, there was a sigh of relief this week when the United States, and articulated by Secretary Bessent, agreed to stay in a leadership role in the Bretton Woods institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, and other IFIs. I think there was some concern that the U.S. was going to pull back or downsize or try to undermine these institutions. But what we heard from the Secretary was a reaffirmation of not only the U.S. Belief in these institutions, but they want to play a leadership role. They want to get back to factory settings. I get that. I actually agree with it. So I think a reaffirmation. The second is just the uncertainty over trade and tariffs, and that's really creating turmoil around the world and enormous uncertainty about the trajectory of growth.
Tim, again, when you talk to your counterparts in D.C. and the IMF and all our global trading partners, is there a sense that globalization, as kind of we've grown up with the last, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, is that over?
Well, it certainly feels like we're moving into a new chapter. I actually think globalization of the last 40, 50 years improved a lot of tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people globally, and I actually think it was good for the U.S. economy. But they had that discussion in the last election. Let's move on and figure out what does the next chapter look like. And I think we want an outcome that works for the United States and works for others. Alliances and trade still matter. David Ricardo taught us that 250 years ago. We just need to stay true to the lessons we've learned over time. But I understand that the U.S. wants a better deal from some countries, including China. I get that. Let's move on to that, resolve that dispute, and then get back to basics.
Tim, you mentioned China, and obviously that's a huge trading partner with the United States. Any sense of kind of what the administration's strategy is as it relates to China at this point?
Well, so far it's been to try to isolate and bludgeon a bit. I've been going to China for 30 years. I don't know that that's going to work. I understand that the president believes in his strategy. He's certainly a history of negotiations. So we'll see if it works. I think you've got to find carrots and sticks. I think that you've got to build an alliance, and I think you've got to treat China with respect. Trying to bludgeon them to come to the table hasn't worked in the past. I don't think it's going to work this time.
Tim Adams with us, with the IIF, after his conversation with the Secretary of Treasury. Just a terrific perspective, not only on our banking industry and the people he represents with the IIF, but also, of course, with his Kentucky and the Republican Party. Tim Adams, let me shift gears with you right now. And this is going to go out of your sense of Kentucky. Cassius Marcellus Clay started a Republican Party a few years ago in Kentucky out of the Civil War. And, you know, it was an old style Kentucky party. And then it goes on to what you lived with the Bush family. There was a certain character to a Republican Party at Walker's Point in Kennebunkport. That's been blown up. Just look at the Oval Office with the gold and the, you know, I probably think got Tim Adams' portrait up there and all the rest. Tim Adams, what does the old Republican Party do? Do they vote Democrat? Is there a third party here? What does your Republican Party do in the next 4 years?
Well, if you remember Bush 41, who I worked for as a young White House staffer, talked about a kinder, gentler country, and I think that's true, and I had the honor of working for Bush 43 as well, and they believed in real decorum. Look, I think there are a lot of people across the country trying to figure out which of the two boxes they fit in. I just would like to find a party that wants to be pro-growth, pro-business, pro-capital formation, pro-risk-taking, that believes in trade. As I said, we've got 250 years of experience that trade actually makes us wealthier.
Right.
So that's what I'm looking for. And, you know, there's no reason why the Republican Party can't offer that, or the Democratic Party. Right now, I think the Democratic Party is a bit lost, but there's an opportunity to reinvent themselves.
Bessent of the Treasury worked for Soros years ago. He seems to be able to work with everyone. Marco Rubio, I would suggest Tim Adams is someone IIF and the bankers can deal with. He's a more traditional Republican. In this Donnybrook run, look at the Economist cover this week of the Bandaged Eagle. Tim Adams, are you looking to Secretary Rubio and Bessent for leadership to help the president get back to where we were?
Yes, absolutely. And look, you've got great leadership on the Capitol Hill. Chairman of Financial Services Committee, French Hill, I spoke with this week, known him for 30 years, also that way. Bill Haggerty, Dave McCormick. There are people on Capitol Hill, there are senators and House members that I think also believe in engagement, free trade, and just capital formation and growth. We need a pro-growth strategy. Yeah.
Paul, I got 8 more questions.
I know.
Jump in here, Paul.
Exactly.
Tim and I are going to start talking about Henry Clay in a moment.
Exactly.
Paul, save us.
Hey, Tim, talk to us about regulatory policy here. How do you think this administration is kind of just viewing how they want to regulate U.S. commerce? I mean, there was a belief at the election that this is going to be a pro-growth administration, maybe a little bit light-handed as it relates to regulation. How do you think that's developing here?
Yeah, I think they do. I think philosophically that's exactly where they want to go. Now you have to do it on a sector-by-sector basis, and we're seeing in the energy sector a real push, as he said, you know, drill, baby, drill. Let's find ways to increase oil and gas production. Yeah, on top of the U.S. being already the largest oil producer at 13.2 million barrels a day. So I think that's true. On financial services, they're finding their way through. I think we'll get to a good point. It really depends on the sector. I do think they do want to focus on deregulation.
Tim Adams, is the new method of communication for bankers not through Tim Adams' IIF, but they have to appear on Fox TV because that's what the president watches? Is that what we've become?
Well, Jamie's a unique individual, and he's a larger-than-life figure, and I think he's a great voice and a great face for not only the financial service industry, but for industry generally. I think it was a brilliant move of him to go where he knew the president would be watching. And so I'm a big Jamie fan. I think all of our voices need to be heard in a variety of places, including Bloomberg. You are such an important medium. So we're all out there every day.
He's just looking for Red Sox tickets. Tim, Tim, I look at this, and again, there's the international component. Please tell me what the European bankers, through the IIF, what they observe in Washington.
Well, look, they want to know where financial regulation is going. The Basel process, the Basel III, we've been working on for 15 years. Is there some resolution? Is it coming? What does that mean? And what does that mean for Europe? But I'll tell you, this Trump shock, I think, has been a wake-up call for Europe. I actually think there's an opportunity for Europe to seize the moment and put in place policies that will create capital formation, job creation, and they can grow. They certainly need a defense and industrial base, a security industrial base. Europe's moment is here. Can they seize it? I don't know. But what I heard from this week from European officials, they know it. And there are some here that want to move forward.
And Tim, I mean, along those lines, I think a lot of folks feel like, okay, Germany can certainly step up and make those types of investments. Maybe even Poland, I've heard, because just given their geography relative vis-a-vis Russia. But how about the rest of Europe? I'm thinking, Italy, Spain, Portugal. I mean, what can they realistically do in terms of, investment in their infrastructure and their defense?
Well, you're right. Germany, after decades of dormancy in terms of a new investment, is ready to spend. I think the Chancellor Merz will take over May 7th.
Right.
He's got a great vision. I was in Warsaw 2 weeks ago. As you said, Poland is really a great intellectual leader in terms of growth and capitalism. The Baltic states, the Nordics, met with Spanish officials yesterday. I think Spain has an enormous story to tell. Rapid economic growth in Spain. And so there is some upside. Many of them have fiscal challenges. They have large debt to GDP. They have large deficits, so they've got to work through fiscal. But I think there's an opportunity for a mindset that the private sector, not the public sector, the private sector can play a growth leading role.
Tim Adams, Kentucky rebuild to beat Paul Sweeney's Duke. I mean, can Mark Pope get it done at Kentucky so they finally wallop Duke?
Well, we beat Duke this year in the regular season.
Yeah.
It was a big win for Mark Pope. I think he's got a great team he's going to put on the floor next year. I like him. I think he's a real deal, and the players like him as well.
Tim Adams, generous of you to spend this time with us this morning. He's with the IIF, and of course that really important conversation with Secretary Bessent here a few days ago, which truly moved the markets.